There's at least one senator on Capitol Hill looking out for the working class and not the banksters, and that's Bernie Sanders. Thanks to his efforts, we the taxpayers are privy to exactly what the Federal Reserve has been up to since the financial meltdown of 2008. And the latest release of numbers from the Fed to Senator Sanders' office reveals that over the past few years, the largest banks in America have pulled off one of the biggest scams in the history of our nation. Since 2008, the Fed has been creating money out of thin air and then dishing that cash out as low-interest loans. We're talking really low-interest loans, like 1%, 0.5%, 0.25% to some of the biggest banks in the nation, like J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup. The idea was that the banks would use that money to loan out to small businesses to hire people again, basically to jumpstart our economy, or so we were told. But the truth is, as revealed by Senator Sanders, those loans were merely vehicles to transfer billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars from you and me, the taxpayers, directly into the pockets of the banksters on Wall Street. Here's how it worked. The Fed would give a bank like Citigroup a couple $1 billion at, let's say, a 1% interest rate. Then what Citigroup would do is lend that money they just got from the Fed back to the U.S. government Treasury at a much higher interest rate. It's like if I asked you to loan me $100 at a 1% interest rate, then next year I'll have to pay you $101. But if as soon as you lent me that $100, I turned right around and lent it back to you at a 5% interest rate, then while I'm paying you $101 next year, you're paying me $105. I just made $4 profit. Of course, $4 is small potatoes. But when we're talking about loans in the millions and billions of dollars, the interest can add up really quickly. And it did. In 2008, J.P. Morgan Chase took out a loan from the Fed of $1.2 billion at an interest rate of 2.1%. Then J.P. Morgan Chase used that money to loan the government $2.2 billion at 4.6% interest. They profited $30 million off the deal, and all they had to do was sit on their hands and wait for the government, you and me, to pay them their interest. In 2009, Citigroup took out a loan from the Fed of $12.1 billion at an interest rate of 0.5%, and then loaned that same money back to the government at an interest rate of 3.9%. They profited more than $441 million off the deal. Again, doing absolutely nothing except waiting for the government to use our tax dollars to pay them their interest. Also in 2009, Bank of America took out loans from the Fed totaling $2.9 billion at a rate of a measly 0.25%. That's 1/4%. And then turned around and loaned $23.5 billion to the government at a rate of 3.2%. They profited more than a whopping $744 million off this crooked deal with the taxpayers. That's $750 million, absolutely free. We're talking billions and billions in new profits that the banksters made. And what do we, the taxpayers, have to show for it? Nothing. The banksters didn't loan a penny of that almost free Fed money out to small businesses. They didn't loan a penny of it to homeowners to refi their mortgages. They didn't create a single job or save a single home. Not a damn thing except the truth about what happened, and even that, Senator Sanders had to fight and claw for in the Senate. Back in 2008, when the shredded money was hitting the fan in our financial markets, and George W. Bush was parading Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson and Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke out to warn us all that our economy was going to implode unless drastic actions were taken, there were actually plenty of things Bush could have done to stave off doom. He could have nationalized the banks, saved the taxpayers trillions, and put in place reforms to prevent all this from happening again. It's what Iceland did, and it worked. It's what Sweden did in the 90s, and it worked. It's what Ronald Reagan did with the S&Ls when they exploded after he deregulated them, and it worked. It even showed a profit for the American taxpayer. And Reagan sent over 1,000 banksters to prison. Instead of bailing out the banks, Bush could have let them fail and instead bailed out all the homeowners who were screwed into exploding mortgages, just like FDR did in the 1930s, moving them all over to long-term, low-interest government-financed mortgages, a bottom-up solution. that, again, by the way, when FDR did it, actually made a profit for the federal government. But Bush didn't do any of that. Instead, he went the trickle-down route, giving the rich banksters trillions and waiting for that money to trickle down on the rest of us. Hasn't worked. Hasn't worked anywhere it's ever been tried, any time in history. Never. So here we are today. After trillions were given to the banksters, the rich are richer, in fact, richer than they've ever been. The stock market gamblers are surging, and yet the economy still sucks for working people. Nothing has trickled down. And as Standard & Poor's said last week, there is greater risk in our financial markets today than there was before 2008. Thanks to trickle-down, we're headed to another collapse. Until there's a fundamental realignment within the Democratic Party, until they change their party's vision and blow away trickle-down economics for good, then things will get continuously worse. The Progressive Caucus has banished trickle-down from their budget, and the president gave a mild dismissal of Reaganomics a few weeks ago. But the entire Democratic Party needs to unite in their opposition to a for the rich, by the rich economy. The Republicans are hopelessly lost, having thrown their weight firmly behind Wall Street. But there's no reason why the Democrats should be in the banksters' pockets as well. Because the only thing trickle-down economics produces is a nation of peons.